Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Melissa, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
How's it been going?
Good. My daughter did take a class of yours.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Great. I should have looked at that. Right, she's
Oh,
in
I like you look like virtual.
virtual.
I have not perfected that at all. I'm still working on it.
Oh, you look great. What are you talking about?
Oh gosh, this is just our office.
That's beautiful. I was just thinking I haven't been to new offices yet, and it
Oh, no,
looks
this is actually my home office.
very nice.
Yeah, you do have to come see. You should definitely come see the other offices.
Yeah, I was just thinking, wow, I haven't seen it, but COVID has been going on, right?
Really?
I heard, I don't know, there's so much fake news now that it's hard to get a grip.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it's not. So,
Yeah.
so how's your daughter?
She's good. We actually are homeschooling 6 of our children. Well, we're doing the hybrid model. I have 6.
You have
I have 6. I have elementary till a senior in high school. So I've got the gamut going on.
Oh my God. You got to
Yeah.
go far. How are you doing that and working at the same time?
It's been interesting, but we've set it up kind of probably with what you're going to go over today. We've put a lot of thought into how we set it up. So we have like a study area. Each kid has their own like desk and area and supplies. And then we have a break area and a sensory room. And we set it all up so it works.
And who's supervising that?
Well, we have like up to high school. So between my husband and I, we're kind of doing work and supervising. And they're in school some of the time.
Wow, that's really impressive.
How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, I think. But we're very busy now, as you can imagine.
That's great.
Yeah, and so we have parents that are doing hybrid, remote 100%, and I'm hearing now that some schools are going to try to go back 100%. Is that true? What do you hear?
I've heard the same thing, not for me. We're in Westport.
Oh,
They haven't even mentioned that. And I don't think they will because we have a middle school that's been closed. So I think until that one opens, I don't think there's a possibility of doing 100%. But I did hear Wilton, Darien, and New Canaan, I believe, are trying to go back. But those schools have been, like, they formed a committee, I think, together. So they've been talking a lot.
Yeah, I know that Westport, every other day I'm reading, somebody in a class at the elementary school level got, the virus. So now the whole class is quarantining and it's hard to get. But, it's what it is. And I think everybody just has to kind of go with it because what other choice do we have, right? Nobody wants to be sick.
Yeah.
Um,
I know. Well, this was great that you, this idea of everyone all together. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for doing it. I hope Mark wasn't too, um, here's Chris.
Yeah, no, he's fine. Mark was happy to do it. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Great.
Hello, Christopher. Oh, he's muted.
Hello, guys.
Hi. You're invisible.
I know.
Oh, there he is.
Here I am. Let's see how my hair looks.
You look great.
Hey, who's Janet? Is she one of the participants?
That would be my guess.
Oh, poor Janet had to listen to our conversation.
That's correct. I am one of the participants.
Great.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
It's like TV. Just got like insider info.
Yeah, you'd have to hear me clicking away on my keyboard the whole time.
What grades are your kids, Janet?
So they're in 7th and 5th, and we're in Westport as well.
Oh, nice. I have a 7th grader too.
Wow.
Well, I'm assuming everyone's still at Bedford.
Yeah.
Are they opening, is it Coleytown?
Yeah, I'm a Coleytown side.
Okay, because I heard they were pushing that off again.
They are until January, I hear.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how you're doing it with 6 kids because I can barely do it with 2. Well, because the half day, one has half days and the other one has 2 days a week. Then
Yep.
every
Yeah,
other day.
we have, and so it's elementary, middle, and high school. And then we have 4 high schoolers, and 3 of our high schoolers are on one schedule, and one of the high schoolers is on a different schedule. So it's been interesting.
Amazing. That's impressive. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
So
So,
I think it's going to be fun to watch everyone start popping up.
so Janet, what are you noticing with your kids? How are they doing?
So my son is doing fine, but that's because he communicates via playing Xbox and things like that on his free time. My daughter is having a little bit of a harder time because she likes to socialize directly with people.
That's really tough for kids. Some of us adults also, I think.
Yeah. My 7th grader had a mini meltdown today because his mask didn't fit him well. And he was heading in. I was like, oh, sorry, bud.
That math, it didn't fit him well?
The mask. He couldn't find his favorite one, and you got to wear them. So
Oh, his math. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In terms of format, hey guys, this is Mark. You're gonna have to mute your speakers. Speakers. There's a dial on them. All right. Let's try this again. Hello, this is Mark from Sasco River. In terms of just a little housekeeping, what I'm thinking is it's just 2 minutes to 10 now. I think what we'll do is allow people maybe 2 or 3 minutes after 10 to join us, and then we'll start the presentation. So obviously, feel free to chat meanwhile, and we'll get started shortly. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat while the presentation is going on, and happy to answer any questions or help with any technical difficulties.
Excellent. So, Mark, has everybody muted themselves or have you muted everybody? Is everybody on mute automatically?
sorry, my speakers were off. What did you say there, Michelle?
I'm wondering if everybody is, we've muted or Mark has muted everybody, so they can't talk. Well, I guess it's 10 o'clock, so it doesn't matter.
You didn't mute everyone, did you?
We're good.
I think they can unmute on their own if anyone wants to chat. It just, when you join into the chat, it automatically mutes them.
If you're just joining us, is there an echo?
No.
Is that me? Okay. If you are just joining us, this is Mark, Marketing and Communications at Sasco River Center, and we are giving people 2 or 3 minutes to just join us here. Looks like we got I don't know, about a third of the people that registered are online right now, so maybe we'll give them like maybe 1 more minute and then we'll get going. So just hang on. You can feel free to chat if you have anything to say before. All right.
Or any questions, maybe.
All right, I think we're about ready to get going here. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Maydiek. I'm doing my best Janet Jackson impersonation with my headset. For those of you who are of an age, will remember that reference. We have representatives from Sasco River Center and S4 Study Skills today. Dr. Christopher Bogart, Michelle, I'm going to mess up the last name. I hope not too drastically, but Saglin, I believe.
That's good. It works.
Close? Okay. My name gets messed up more than you'd believe. And Melissa Kahn, who is also co-executive director of Sasco River Center. The moderator today is going to be Dr. Bogart, and I'm going to pass it off to him in terms of the moderation, but I'm going to be sharing my screen for the presentation. If there's any questions or comments, you can add them into the chat, and I will try to pass them along to the moderators, to the panelists. And without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here. If I get this done properly, hopefully. There we go. All right. Is that up for everybody? I think it is.
There it is.
Great. All right. One last thing. So in terms of technical presentation, I'm presenting the slides here on my computer, and the panelists will be telling me when to advance. So they will be giving me audio cues as to when to advance. I'll try to make my best guesses how to do that along the way. But if you hear them ask for an advance, that's the reason for that. All righty. Chris, take it away.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our third in our series of parent presentations. For those of you who are new to Sasco River Center, we've been doing these types of parent presentations. Actually, prior to Sasco River Center as the Southfield Center, we've been doing a parent lecture series for the last decade, and are continuing that as a tradition with Sasco River Center. What we try to do is we always try to hit on pertinent topics relevant to the present moment. And this year, obviously, the pervading factor in all of our worlds is the impact of COVID and the pandemic on our children. And so a couple weeks ago, I did a presentation looking at some of the ways to help kids get balanced as they enter back into school. And then Dr. Carolyn Siegel did a presentation on social connections during pandemic. Today, we thought we would broaden the focus and look at what we see as three of the main areas that relate to child development, the emotional, the academic, and the physical factors within child adjustment. And we thought we would bring in folks who could talk to each one of those areas individually, and then also provide some time for questions and for us to go into more depth in any areas that you want us to. As Mark mentioned, we are honored to have with us the founder and president of S4 Study Skills, a superb program, if you're not familiar with them, up in Southport, Connecticut, although they do presentations all across the area. And they specialize in excellent workshops for children, teaching them study skills, and they also do individual tutoring for kids as well. And Michelle and I have been friends for quite some time, and she joins us this morning. And then I also have the pleasure of my partner, co-executive director, Melissa Kahn, who was the founder of Sensory Kids, the occupational therapy and sensory integration practice based in Stanford and Wilton. And then back in January, she and I merged our operations and we now form the Sasco River Center. So what we're going to do is we're each going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to focus on our area of expertise. You have about 75 years of experience in working with kids. If you combine all three of us together, I make up about 55 of that. And Michelle and Melissa make up about 10 each. So anyway, we definitely have some nice information to present to you. What we thought we would do is try to stay broader and kind of whet your appetite with some main pieces that the research is showing are the main areas that are going to be important for you as parents to keep on your radar. We also tried to make our comments relevant, whether your child is 5 years of age or 15 years of age or 55 years of age. We tried to make these concepts relevant across the continuum because we know we have folks joining us this morning that may have young children or may have older children. And so everything that we talk about really can be applied across that continuum with a little bit of ingenuity and modification. So without further ado, Mark, if you could just adjust to the next slide, that would be great. You'll see our agenda, which is we're going to be starting with general introductory comments, which we can check that one off as I've done that one. Then I'm going to go into talking about helping your child and yourself remain emotionally balanced. And we're going to be looking at 5 specific areas as it relates to emotional adjustment. Then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who is going to talk about optimizing your child's learning practice and some specific strategies for keeping your student on track and on task, whether they are working directly with in school and coming home and doing homework, or if there are those situations, as many of our students are, that are working remotely, how to help keep them on track and on task. Then Melissa's going to move into the sensory area and look at some background on sensory development and looking at effective sensory breaks. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So that's our agenda. So first piece that we're going to look at, for those of you who joined me a couple weeks ago, a little bit of this is going to be redundant, but I feel like it's critical to use this as the foundation because honestly, if there's nothing else that you remember about what I say today, what's critical is to understand a couple of factors that relate to how the brain adjusts to different situations and a couple of factors that will underscore each one of the areas that I go into. If you keep these couple of areas relevant and in the front of your mind, you're going to be light years ahead in terms of helping your children adjust more effectively. So the first thing that we know about the brain from countless research studies is the human brain hates being in a situation of the unknown, meaning that that you're in a situation where you don't know what's about to happen to you, where you don't know how to handle the situation, where you don't have enough data to evaluate what's going on around you. The human brain hates that feeling of the unknown. And a very connected part to that is the second piece, where the human brain hates to be reminded of the reality that we really don't control a lot of what goes on around us. We like to create a lot of scenarios where we give ourselves the illusion of control, but the reality is we don't have control over so many different things that are going on in our world around us. And the human brain hates to be reminded of that. We like to live in a little bit of of denial that gives us this perception of being in control. because when the brain starts to experience a feeling of the unknown and a feeling of lack of control, what that automatically does is it triggers off the emotional centers of the brain to begin releasing stress hormones. And that's a good thing, because stress hormones allow us to effectively prepare ourselves for many different situations that might come our way. What a stress hormone does when it goes into your body is it increases your autonomic nervous system, it increases your heartbeat, it increases your breath rate, it increases the flow of oxygen through your body, it gets your muscles ready to be able to handle situations that might be thrown at you where you have to react very quickly. The downside to it is that stress hormones turn off or make it less easy to access some of the parts of the brain that allow us to think flexibly and allow us to apply logic to the situation. The evolutionary reasoning here is that when you're in a situation of extreme crisis, you don't need to remember what you learned in 8th grade algebra. You need to be able to react quickly. You don't need to be able to sit there and ponder the meaning of life. You need to react. And so what the stress hormones do is it gets you ready to react, but it also increases your rigidity. It makes you less flexible in your approach to problem solving, and it reduces your logic. So everything we're going to be talking about over the next 5 slides are areas that you as a parent can do personally, as well as your children can do, to maximize your ability to reduce the feeling of unknown, to stay present, to reduce your feeling of being in control, so that you can care for your body and your brain and not be flooded by too many stress hormones, and that you can help your child move towards that as well. Okay, so that's the foundation piece to this. Now I'm going to go through 5 slides that speak to what the research is telling us as being the most important areas for us to focus on as we help our children adjust and be emotionally healthy. Okay, so the next slide looks at the importance of staying present. And the reason why it is important to stay present is because that reduces your brain's tendency to go into the future and look at all of the things in the future that you can't control. Okay, so what we are going to try to be looking at are ways to reduce our brain's tendency to start feeling overwhelmed by staying present. And the first thing I want to put on your radar, if you want to do a little reading, is an article I read over the last couple of weeks by a woman named Tara Haley. If you go online and you Google Tara Haley, your surge capacity is depleted, I think it's going to give you a little bit of an understanding of why you might be experiencing, and why some of your kids might be experiencing, this feeling of being a little bit more tired than they would typically be with the typical things that they're doing in their day-to-day existence, and a little bit less of that reserve that we sometimes have to face this. And what Tara talks about in this article, she references a lot of different cool research, but some of the specific research is that the human brain has the ability to adjust to crisis situations in an incredibly profound way. But we have in our brain what is called our surge capacity, that after an extended period of time where your brain is operating on this super hyper reactivity to stress in your environment, what ends up happening is you reach a wall that is considered your surge capacity. Your brain can no longer process what to do in facing some of the stress that's around you. And so some of the different things that research is showing to help us deal with this ongoing pandemic, which, when we first talked about it, way back in February and March, we talked about, all right, we'll shut down the schools for 2 weeks, we'll clean them, and then we'll go back to school. And then we know that lasted on for another several weeks. And then that lasted into the summer. And now we're into the fall. And now the latest predictions are that more than likely this pandemic is going to be a part of our life well into 2021 and maybe beyond that. And we need to now learn to deal with it. And so step 1 to that is acknowledge the feelings and say, yeah, this is crappy. This is really frustrating what we're all dealing with. Acknowledge the feelings. Don't pretend that they're not there, and help your kids acknowledge the feelings by naming them for them. Yeah, it is frustrating that soccer was canceled this fall. Yeah, it really is frustrating that you're not able to get together with your friends as easily. And then the second part to that is what is called radical acceptance, which is a part of, if any of you have studied mindfulness, if you've heard of what's called DBT, which is one of the growing areas of psychotherapeutic treatment. DBT is a acronym for dialectic behavior therapy. And one of their primary pieces that they teach people is the concept of radical acceptance. And radical acceptance is nothing more than the idea of acknowledging that life throws at us some pretty awful scenarios. And the only thing you can do is take a breath and say, yeah, sometimes horrible situations happen. Sometimes we have pandemics. Sometimes we have hurricanes. Sometimes we have wildfires. Yes, it happens. Take a breath, acknowledge it, let it sink in, deal with it, and then move into the next stage, which is talking about focusing on what you can control. And what Tara talks about in the article, she references some research from Dr. Michael Medeiros, is one of the best things we can do is focus on little projects that help you to feel like you're controlling your environment. So this, I can't tell you the number of families I've talked to that have painted their family room or have built new furniture for, for their kids' bedrooms, or have done a vegetable garden this summer. Focus on what you can control. And believe it or not, something as simple as having a little project or giving your child and working with your child on a project that has a beginning, a middle, and an ending where you can feel a sense of completeness does an amazing amount to help your brain focus on what you can control. So Mark, if you click the next piece there, you'll see Dr. Michael Medeiros is the person who talks about this. You can Google him, or you can just get a summary of that in Tara Haley's article. And then the final piece to this is, if you can get a mindfulness practice going yourself, and you can really show your children how easy it is to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is this fancy term that has blown into our awareness over the last decade or so. Everybody's talked about mindfulness in one way or another. And believe it or not, it's a 5,000-year-old concept. It's been around since some of the ancient civilizations, and it's nothing more than taking moments out of your day to take a breath, focus on what you're thinking and feeling at that moment, and stay present for a few moments, and give your brain the sense of control by saying, all I need to do right now is breathe, focus on what I'm feeling, taking a few minutes off from all of the other whirlwind that's going on around us, and help calm myself. And if you can practice a mindfulness practice and get your kids to give a chance to this, what I'm going to give you next are 3 apps that were designed specifically for children, that are really great apps that are free to download and give kids little 5-minute, 3-minute mindfulness exercises. So there's Headspace, there's Stop, Breathe, and Think, and there's Smiling Mind, and there's several others. These are 3 I just want to put on your radar. Easy apps to download. Get your kids to start doing little 2, 3, 4-minute mindfulness moments through their day, at the start of the day before they go off to school, at the end of the day before they do homework, or even best at bedtime. That's going to be a really great time to do it. Okay? So the importance of staying present is number 1. The second piece, the importance of family meetings. This may seem like a small piece, but one of the things that I work with every family I see in my practice and every family I have over the years is it's important to periodically have family meetings, because what that does is, again, it gives your kids the sense that in the craziness that's going on around us of adjusting to in-person learning or hybrid learning programs or all the different social demands and blah, 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 all the stuff that's going on around that you can't control or sometimes feel is out of control. By having a family meeting, it gives the message of you as the parents, we got this. I've got a plan. Things may not all be perfect, but we've got a plan as a family and we're in control. And so the basic pieces to a family meeting are, the first piece is, first of all, put it on your kids' radar of, hey, we're going to start this family meeting thing. We're going to do it on Sunday nights at 7 o'clock after dinner. or we're going to do it every 3 weeks on Tuesdays at 6. I don't care when it is. I don't care how frequent it is, but set up a family meeting, create a family mission statement for what the meeting is. It's about giving us an idea of what's coming up in the next few weeks. So we'll go over a family calendar. It's about talking about problem areas in the family. It's giving us a chance to problem solve. And it's giving us a chance to focus a little bit on some of the good stuff that's happening in our lives. So start out by, this is the purpose of the meeting. Tell your kids this is not going to be a long meeting. 15 minutes is about the ideal amount of time. Share the purpose and the agenda of the meeting. Keep it short and sweet. Start out with something positive, okay? Start out with something that one of your kids did around the house that was cool, or start out with something that's cool in your own life, or start out with something like a great TV series that you guys are watching, or something positive that sets the tone of this is meant to be a positive period of time together. And then pull out a family calendar, whether it's something tangible in your hand, or whether it's an electronic calendar, a Google calendar, and create a visible calendar with all the family events put on there, color code each family member, and review and update together what's coming up in the family agenda over the next week so that everybody knows what's coming up. And then spend a little bit of time problem solving. If there's something going on that's not working, model problem solving skills. Everybody gets a chance to share what their perception is of the issue. Everybody gets to share what their solution is. So if the problem is we're having a hard time getting up in the morning and getting out the door on time, and one of your kids says, all right, I think we should just skip school and not have to go to school. Don't jump down their throat and say, oh, that's a stupid suggestion. No, we're not going to put it. Write it down as one of the solutions. Terminate school. Write down everything in there. Everybody shares what their solutions are. And then you get a chance to go through and maybe highlight a couple of them that you're going to work on over the next week. And then the next week you go back and say, hey, we talked about this problem. How did that go? What do we need to tweak? The most important thing is not that this family meeting is the most harmonious, lovely part of your week. It's the idea of having something in there that gives your kids the sense of, we got this, we're in control, okay? So 2 things so far: stay present, have a family meeting. Number 3, the importance of sleep. Truly critical. Research over this. I think we all know intrinsically that sleep is important. We know how differently we function when we're sleeping well versus when we're not sleeping well. It's critical that we help our kids develop an effective sleep pattern. Research shows that a lack of good sleep impairs your attention, your working memory, your mood regulation, your executive functions. Newsflash, if kids don't have attention and executive functions and good mood regulation, they're not going to be able to be effective in school. They're not going to be able to be effective socially. 1 hour of lost sleep over 3 days, research is showing reduces kids' cognitive functions by about 12 to 18 months. 1 hour of lost sleep over 3 successive days reduces kids' cognitive functions by about a year. So you're sending your kid off to school. If your kid's going there tired, they're not going to function effectively. So one of the things we all know is screen time is challenging. We need our screens to get through a lot of online learning. We need our screens to do some fun stuff socially. All that sort of stuff is important. And one of the things, our next presentation in the parent presentation series is in a few weeks. Dr. Rothstein and Dr. Glass are going to present to you on some really helpful strategies of helping develop a good relationship with electronics and screens in your family. But here's how it relates to sleep, is by having screens on right up until bedtime significantly reduces the release of melatonin. And without melatonin in your kid's system, what that does is it keeps them from being able to get to sleep and being able to get into the deep sleep they need to repair their brain, and it's going to affect their sleep functions. So in our tips for proper sleep hygiene, one thing is, first piece is don't eat anything, or certainly nothing heavy, for 90 to 120 minutes before you go to sleep. Do something relaxing and non-screen involved for at least 1 hour, and I would recommend 2 hours before sleep. So screens go off 1 hour to 2 hours before sleep time so that your brain has a chance to adjust, and reduce the blue light that's going in and reducing the melatonin. Teach your kids to use their bed only for sleep. Bed should not be where they're doing their homework. Bed should not be where they're sitting there talking to their friends. Beds are for sleep, okay? And good sleep hygiene means teaching the brain to condition it so that the brain gets a sense of when you're in bed, you're going to sleep. And the final piece is keep your room cool and dark, because coolness and darkness helps, again, the release of the hormones and the biochemicals in the brain that help trigger off the idea of sleep. So keep your room cool and dark so that you can ease into sleep more easily, okay? So one of the things you want to adjust is helping your kids develop proper sleep hygiene. Number 4, the importance of play. I think we all know that play is important for kids, but here's a really critical piece to realize is they've studied play, and the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play, a lack of play, triggers off depression. And depression reduces our cognitive functions and keeps us from being available for the many other things that we're involved in. So I'll put on your radar the National Institute of Play, Dr. Stuart Brown. The opposite of play is not work, it is depression. Play defined is time spent without purpose. So put into your kids' lives periods of time that is not scheduled, that is totally open. Go out and find something to do. Turn off your iPad, turn off your TV. It's time spent without purpose, okay? It can be sitting around daydreaming. It can be reading. It can be watching a silly TV show. It can be building something together. It can be going out for a family walk. It can be taking the dog for a walk. It can be playing pickleball. It can be whatever you guys like, time spent without purpose. And remember, play is the language of children. If children don't get play built into their day at different points, they're not developing their ability to communicate and express their feelings. Especially for young children, you need to have free periods of play built into their life because it's their language. It's their way of communicating how they're feeling. It's their way of developing negotiation skills. Social development is based on play. It's a critical facet. The third point, play increases creative energy. We have research to show that the more your kids engage in creative, non-directed, unstructured play, the higher their creative abilities develop. And the fourth piece is develop a family playlist. Get everybody to talk about 5 things that they love doing, a family playlist, put it out on a family chart, see which ones different members of the family might share so that they can do those together, okay? And the fifth and final piece before I turn it over to Michelle is the importance of laughter. We all have heard the proverb, laughter is the best medicine. I didn't know this, but it turns out that laughter is the best medicine comes from the King James Bible in the Proverbs, so it's been around for a while. Obviously, current humans, as well as humans from our past, recognize the importance of laughter in reducing emotional stress. The medical benefits of laughter, some really cool research that's come out, is laughter actually boosts your immune system. It relaxes the body for up to 15 minutes after you've laughed for a little bit. For 45 minutes after that, we notice a reduction in stress hormones in the body. So it boosts your immune system, it relaxes your whole body. It triggers the release of endorphins, which are pleasure feelings. It's something that makes your body, again, feel in control because you have this release of endorphins that fight off some of the stress hormones. It burns calories, believe it or not. It protects the heart and burns calories. That this is new research that's come out that is showing, I mean, this is not replacing exercise, but it is pretty cool to see that by laughing several times a day, you're actually burning calories when you do it. So if you can't get to the gym that day, have a really big day of laughing and you'll keep yourself a little bit better in shape. It reduces the impact of negative emotions. It helps you stay mentally healthy, and it strengthens your relationships with the others that you're laughing with. And so what's critical is to make sure you're putting laughter into your family life. Watch a funny TV show together, share jokes together, talk about something funny that happened to you over dinner. Really give the message that we are a family that can laugh together, and realize that in all the seriousness that goes around us, laughter is the best medicine. Okay? So those are the 5 pieces that are critical in terms of keeping our kids mentally and emotionally prepared for life. Okay? So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle now, and she's going to talk about some great academic strategies.
Great. Hi, everyone. Chris, thank you so much for that really warm and inviting welcome. Thank you. I am going to piggyback on a couple of points that Chris said, and as a footnote, I loved everything he said, and this isn't just for kids. Some of the tips and tools and strategies he suggested, I think many of us could use them for ourselves as well. And I took some notes and plan to do just that. So with that, I would like to also give you 5 ways to support your student in this time of uncertainty. I think one of the things we know for sure is that everything is topsy-turvy right now a little bit, although they're starting to settle in with our part-time, full-time school routines. And I think uncertainty is certain right now for the next little while. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of planning. So next slide. So the first slide that Chris talked about in terms of the brain and how the brain hates unknowns speaks directly to the importance of schedules. And if you recall how we might have felt as parents, as colleagues at the beginning of March when schools were kind of closing one after the other, how out of control we felt and how our schedules were thrown into whack. We had a routine in the morning where the kids would get up, we would get them fed, we would make sure they got on the bus or drop them off, and then we would go to work or go to our home office and get to work or go to the gym or whatever we did. All of that was from pretty much one day to the next ripped away from us. So schedules is probably the best technique to keep in control or to put your life a little bit in control because it gives you structure. And yes, it's that students need structure. Kids don't do well without structure, and I'll get into that in a second, but so do us as adults. And I think talking to friends and colleagues and parents, as we do every day, parents were just so stressed. I mean, all of a sudden it felt that we had more free time, and instead of enjoying it, we all kind of imploded with that. The reason that we need structure, and in the next point I'll refer to it back again, is because with structure we can have an idea of what we need to accomplish, and then we can work towards achieving it towards a deadline. So if I know I'm doing a presentation with Chris and Melissa on Thursday, last week I need to be thinking about what are my topics and how am I going to break that out in terms of when am I going to work on it to get this done. That's what executive functioning is, or a piece of it. And that's what educators call chunking, taking a big project and breaking it down and scheduling it over time. So as you can see on this calendar, this provides students with structure. And the best way to use a planner or have your student use a planner is to get them to do it themselves. If you give them a ready planner, use this, that won't be as effective as if you were to ask them, what do you think would be the best way for you to build your daily schedule and your weekly planner and look beyond? The more buy-in you can get from your student, the better it is. So what we think is that everything should go on the planner. And right now with kids going to school a couple days a week and then home a few days a week, even more, it's really important that they know where they have to be and when they have to be there. And as Chris said, when they wake up in the morning, they have breakfast, they go to their workplace, and they are not working in their bed like I know many students have worked. Okay, Mark, next. Consistency. What you establish today should be continued. There is no point in establishing a schedule today if you're not going to use it tomorrow, and then you're going to on and off again. Consistency is key. And this is a way that not only students feel safe, but we as adults do too, when we can anticipate what's going to happen coming up. The next point I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of routine that kind of flows right out of calendars. And why are routines important? Because routines are important because, again, you can anticipate what's happening. And as Chris said so eloquently, we hate not knowing what's coming up. And we hate the unexpected, and we like to be prepared for it. So without a routine, we don't feel safe. We don't feel like we have a next step of what we should be doing next. We feel a loss of control where we don't know what's coming up next, or we become overwhelmed. I think many kids that we work with, I'm sure Chris and Melissa as well, are feeling very, very stressed, and they felt stressed even before the pandemic. So that is not a new phenomenon, but I think now people, and kids especially, who may not have had the chance of foresight or develop foresight, feel overwhelmed, and structure is important for that, and the routine helps to put that in place, and a calendar, a planner, helps to enforce that. The other thing that we feel about when we don't have a routine is that we lose focus. And this is another concept that Chris talked about. We lose focus. What do I have to do now? What should I have done? What did I forget to do? What's coming up? It's almost like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where everything is coming at you and you don't know almost what to do first. And the last thing why routines are so important about this, and calendars as well, is that you won't be effective or efficient, and your student will be even less effective and efficient if they don't know what's coming up next and how to go about it. When we think about it, prior to March 2020, as I said, our schedules were pretty set, and kids knew what to expect. They knew they had a math test that week. They knew that their teacher would reinforce what they did or what they didn't do. They knew when lunch was or break time was. They knew where they needed to be when. All of a sudden, that is all ripped away. So what happens is, when we don't have a routine, is that we don't feel good. We feel stress, we feel anxiety, and we feel uneasy. A sense of malaise. We don't feel right. So the obvious thing for you to do is to do the opposite of this, is to establish a planner, establish a routine, and once that is put into place, to reinforce it on a daily basis, because that is how a habit is going to be formed. The second thing is set goals and objectives. And we like to talk about the fact that the journey of 1,000 steps, 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So goals should be actionable and reachable. A bad goal would be, I expect you to get straight A's this semester. That is not a good goal. A better goal would be, if you know that your student is shy and doesn't like to ask questions, for example, maybe they can start off emailing or chatting or texting, or however they're communicating with their teacher, to start asking questions. And then maybe they can graduate to that once they feel comfortable. Maybe ask a question on the Zoom or in class. And then, so on and so forth. If your student is very forgetful and never remembers to bring something from school back home or something from home back to school, maybe a goal is to remember to organize their materials in advance so that they're prepared. So these little steps can help you ultimately help your child get to that A that you want or to do well in school. The number three reason that routines are so important is that it helps us be productive. I mean, for me, I start off my day making a checklist. And I know that the kids that we work with, when we sit down and we work with them, like, what do you have to do? What's coming up? And there's a big sense of accomplishment when you can check off your list, all the things that you did, as Chris mentioned, and he used several examples,
Whoa.
including building or a vegetable garden. And the last thing that routines can really be supportive of is good executive functions, which again means initiating a task, taking a project, breaking it out, and scheduling it over time. And all of these things, when you can help your student put a structure in place, set a goal, set objectives that are reachable, attainable, so that they feel good about themselves and their confidence increases. And it allows them to focus and get their work done, so they don't feel on a Wednesday, oh my God, I forgot to do that English paper and it's due tomorrow. All of that leads to reduced stress, reduced anxiety, and helping your kids really feel better about themselves. The number three thing that I'd like to talk to you about, thanks, Mark, is the importance of organization. And right now I'm going to talk to you about material organization stuff. So we get a lot of calls. I'm sure Mark and Melissa do too. My student is so disorganized. And when you ask them what that means, organized, it could mean different things to different people. Right now, I'm going to talk to you about materials. There's nothing more confusing or even mildly stressful than to come into an office or for a student to go to their desk and everything is all over the place. Papers and their calculator, where is it? Where are their books? Where's their charger for their laptop? So important to keep things organized. Encourage your student to develop good organization hygiene. Return materials after use. When they finish math, all of their math work should be put in their math folder. If they're working online, we encourage students to have a folder for every single subject. So 5 subjects, 5 folders: Spanish, English, history, science, math, because you don't want to have your student be hunting around for that rough draft of Catcher in the Rye, the paper that they're doing, and find it in document labeled document 24. That is not helpful. So they should label all of their documents and put it correctly in the right folder. And the other reason that you want to have your student do this is because depending on the grade of your student, when midterms come around, your student will want all of their notes, all their papers and worksheets, because they can use that as a study guide. They don't have to wait for the teacher to give that to them. They will have all of their materials in one place that they can use. Using a planner for a checklist is also very important. I should just make a footnote here about planners. We get the question, what kind of planner should we use, paper or online? And frankly, it doesn't matter. The planner to use is the planner that your student will use. So if they want to use paper, great. And if they want to use online, their Google Calendar or Makeup Calendar on their own, that's great too. And one trick that I think is very effective in keeping your things organized is to get ready for tomorrow today. So what that means is if you're going, and especially now where kids are going to school some days, but not all days, the night before, everything should be in their backpack, their materials, their laptop, their calculator, hopefully fully charged or with their charger that they can take to school. And I encourage kids to pack their backpack and actually leave it near the for. So in the rush of the morning, all they have to do is eat and then grab and go, and they will have all their materials, because you don't want to get the call from school, Mom, I forgot my charger and I don't have any more battery on my computer. You want everything, you want to encourage your student to be ready and be prepared. The next slide is, the next section that I'd like to talk to you about is the importance of focusing on focus. I don't know how many of you saw The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which we've been talking about for years. But social media has done a great disservice for our kids. And all of the people that work at the Googles, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, all social media companies, they employ teams and armies of behavioralists and psychologists and psychiatrists to figure out how they can get you addicted to the phone. So one of the points that I thought was very interesting in The Social Dilemma was the 3 dots. When you send a text, to keep you online, the reader online, you can see the 3 dots that somebody is actually sending a text back to you or composing a text. You're not going to put your phone down when that's happening. You're going to, well, what are they going to say next? So it's a huge distractor. And I think personally, it has reprogrammed kids to not maintain focus for a duration of time because they're so used to being interrupted. So right now, the way this pandemic has hit us, and even we were moving in this before the pandemic, we know that laptops and phones and electronics are essential, but they also distract. So we need to establish rules and protocols so that your student knows how to comport themselves early on. And I think I want to attend that webinar, Chris, that you mentioned coming up on screen time. The important point that I'd like to make here is to set the guidelines early on. Maybe depending on the age and grade of your student, they're not allowed to have phones in their bedroom. When my kids were in middle school, that was absolutely not okay. Phones had to, slept in the kitchen, not in their bed. And to establish the protocol right away so that your student has an expectation. And then the third thing that you might want to consider are these apps that you can find online, whether you have an Apple phone or an Android phone, where you can block out access to certain websites, so that maybe you block out all social media, let's say 8 to 4, and your student can't go onto any of these social media apps. And maybe sometimes that's helpful for us as well. I think that's something to consider. The other last thing that I'd like to say about this is that if you don't want to download an app, many cable companies provide you with this opportunity. So Optimum, you can go online and you can see what you can do to block out certain access. The last thing that I'm going to talk to you about is the importance of being proactive. I think we perform at our worst when all of a sudden we have 5 things that have to get done tomorrow, or when we realize that we're not prepared for something. That's very anxiety producing, and it doesn't serve our kids. So the points about proactivity that I'd like to talk to you about is, Mark, next slide, please. Thank you. Is to anticipate. And we know that kids are struggling now as they transition back to school. One of the moms said before we got going that her daughter is missing seeing her friends. Maybe somebody else's student doesn't want to be wearing a mask. This is not helpful for kids, this new environment that they're living in. And the more they can anticipate, and you can help them to anticipate, the better. So the thing is, Mark, next point, please, thank you, is to talk to your student to discover what gaps they have. Gaps might be one in two areas: subject specific, geometry, or maybe something in time management or executive functioning. They're feeling generally overwhelmed and stressed, or they feel that they're not keeping up. So how can you find out, how can you help your student triage these issues and tease them apart? And by the way, it's the rare student who is going to come to you and say, Mom, Dad, my executive functioning skills are not really where they should be. Most kids aren't going to have the vocabulary to say that. It's going to show in behaviors: lack of sleep, too much sleep, irritability, meltdowns, school avoidance, homework avoidance. So it's up to us as the caregiver, the parent, to help your student understand what might be going on with them when they may not understand it themselves. So how can you do this? The way you can do this is to ask questions, open-ended questions. Don't assume anything, and obviously be non-judgmental. So you could ask your student, what are you having, what is challenging you most? Concerned about? How is that Algebra 2 class going? What would make it easier for you this year? Are you finding a correlation with maybe the way you were executing or writing your English paper last year with this year? Is this something that you think you might need some extra support with? What can I do to help support you? And these questions, when asked in a very calm, non-judgmental way, can really help your student be reflective and understand and understand what's going on, so that you can help them. You can get them the help they need. So I think my last point is, don't wait to get help. If you think something is going on, get help, and reach out to the teachers or the guidance counselors or to Chris, or even whoever you feel comfortable with, and get help to help your student, and empower your kid to ask the questions and to self-advocate. So with that, I hope I didn't go over my time. I am done, and I'm passing the baton to Melissa. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That was so wonderful, actually, to hear like all the different perspectives from 3 different views. So I have the sensory piece. And so can you actually go to the next one? I'm going to try to give a very brief overview, like sensory 101, just to get a real background of how sensory plays into this and how it's impacting all of the skills that both Chris and Michelle have already talked about. We're going to talk a little bit about how the change of learning from home or using more virtual and remote learning and the hybrid models have been affecting the sensory systems. And then I'd like to really end and lead into some real strategies and what is an optimal sensory break and what to look for and when to perform them, and even leave you with some actual tools to utilize in terms of a sensory. And I'm happy to follow up after and provide any other written materials that we can provide out after this of additional ideas. So I love this pyramid here, and I think it's been great because I like to use this a lot to explain sensory processing. But if you see the white area at the very top, it has all of academic learning, behavior, activities of daily living, which we have all been talking about for the past 45 minutes. And what is important about this slide for what I'm going to be speaking about is that the blue is all of the sensory systems. And when we're talking about sensory processing, we're talking about how the lower foundational sensory systems are impacted, how those skills are independently work, how they work together to impact those higher level skills at the top. Sorry, hold on one second here. So when we talk about sensory processing, if there's any impact in any of the sensory systems below, it does influence in the higher level systems. And so activities of daily living, or even things like routines, which we've all talked about has been interrupted, behavior, academic learning, those are all things that are related to the lower level foundational pieces of sensory processing. So on the next slide, we all know what the 5 sensory systems are: touch, hearing, smell, taste, and sight. But there's 2 additional sensory systems that we don't talk about that often that play a very key role: the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system. So your vestibular system is located in your inner ear. And the reason I'm mentioning that is when we talk about sensory breaks later, if you know that your vestibular system is located in your inner ear, the way to activate it is going to be by moving your head around through space. And your vestibular system is closely linked to your attention center through the reticular activating system. It gives you your balance, it gives you your posture. And so it's very key in terms of all of the skills that we're talking about already. And everyone thinks that you should be able to sit still and learn. However, the highest form of your vestibular processing is your ability to sit still and learn. And the only way that you can get to the ability to sit still is through movement. So if we're not moving, you actually can't sit still. It's not possible. So our kids developmentally are already doing this. We see this a lot of the times, like when they're younger, they're constantly moving to be able to learn how to gain balance and movement. And as you get older, that's refined, and you're able to sit for longer periods of time, but you still have like natural breaks built in throughout your day. Even now during this presentation, I think I switched my position like 10 different times, just listening and to everyone else speak. Although I was very interested, my body just needed to be stimulated to be able to focus and pay attention to what everyone is saying. And then your proprioceptive system is located in your muscles and your joints. And the reason that's important is because it gets stimulated when you are giving more input to your muscles and joints. And that could be through squeezing, hanging, jumping, all the things that we think about as true sensory kids. But when you are activating your proprioceptive system, what you're doing is your brain is releasing a neurotransmitter called serotonin, and that has an extremely calming effect on your body. So if you think about when you get a massage, the whole point of a massage is to relax in the moment. And that's because you're giving deep touch or proprioceptive input into your body, and it's having an overall relaxing effect. So we'll talk about these 2 systems in a little bit when we're talking more about what we're going to do for sensory breaks. So I wanted to put this up here because another impact, and we've been mentioning it, both Chris has mentioned it when he's talking about a surge, is that our arousal level is also impacted by sensory processing. So if you look at this chart, I want you just for a moment to pretend that the yellow line is you. So I want you to think of yourself as a cup that's half full of water, which is this yellow line. And as you start your day, you have this half full cup. And as you wake up in the morning, you realize that your alarm was set for the wrong time and you're going to be late for the day. So your cup is getting more full. And then you go to leave to drive your kids to school, and it's already new routines, and you realize that your car's out of gas and you're not going to be able to make it there if you don't stop on the way. And so your cup's getting even more full. And then you stop and you get gas and you're late, and your child doesn't like being late, so the anxiety levels are going high. Drop them off, all goes well. And then you are heading into work and you have a presentation to give, and you spill coffee all over yourself. And so again, you're getting more and more aroused and anxious and nervous. And then you make it through the rest of your day. You're a little on edge. Your coworkers aren't so thrilled with you, but you get home and your partner asks you if you remembered to pick up milk on the way home, and you lose it. You yell at them for pretty much no reason. All they asked you to do was if you picked up the milk. But basically what's happening there is that your cup got too full with things throughout the day that normally maybe you would have been able to handle. And if you think about the green line there, the green line is like our normal ability to kind of flex and be fluid with different stressors that happen in our lives. And our kids have been able to do that relatively well. However, everything has changed. So even us and our children are both kind of functioning on that almost at the top or about to fall over. So getting sleep, like Chris had mentioned before, or actually adding in sensory breaks or imposed breaks. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about in a moment, is that every time we're adding in a sensory break, we're kind of lowering back down into that shaded area, which gives us a better optimal range for responding to the ever-changing circumstances that keep being thrown at our children. So we're trying to stay in that optimal level of arousal. And I just thought that's a good example of how even we can we have our own strategies normally. Like if you think about how you're getting through this presentation or how you get through your day, like what is optimal for you? Is it working out in the morning? Is it having a cup of coffee? Is it fidgeting with your pen while you're listening to something? So really being able to utilize your own sensory strategies to keep yourself in a great range, but you have more of that flexibility and control over your lifestyle, where our kids right now don't as much. So they have newly imposed structures, newly imposed learning, things that they're not used to. So I feel that they're already starting kind of like where that yellow line is versus where maybe before they would have been starting where the green line is. Okay, can you do the next slide? Nothing showed up. Okay, so in terms of the sensory systems and some of the remote learning, these are actually things that have occurred, but some of our kids might do better with them, and some of our kids might be having a harder time with them. So I just wanted to point them out. So we've talked a lot about screen time, and we talked about how maybe it's not so great for our children in terms of the blue light and the fatigue and the ocular motor difficulties and sleep. However, there's some of our children that might do really well with focusing in one area and not being so distracted by all of the visual distractions and kids moving and all other different things, but really being able to have it all in one place. And there are a lot of kids who are like that. So just to remember that there's kind of two sides to this. The next one. Change in natural movement of the day. Again, this too has affected the sensory systems in the way that we're not getting movement. So before, either in school, if you're doing, like if you had the regular day, you would move from class to class if your kids were older. And if they were younger, you would have more recess time, more socialization time, more chance to actually like get up and move around, get your materials. Right now, the movement is kind of limited. So you're staring at a screen for a lot of the time. You're limited in your movement as they don't want you spreading COVID. So you're either wearing a mask and you're staying in one line along the hallways, or you're in your own home. And when you do have a break, your break usually, unless you're motivated and encouraged to get up and move, your break is chatting with your friends on your devices. So a lot of our kids are not really getting that movement throughout the day, which is so important to keep their arousal and their attention in an optimal place for learning. And even with the difference in the natural structure, there was something I was thinking of that Chris had said, and now I just blanked on that. Oh, maybe also it was about the fact that a lot of the kids too are able to kind of come up with their own timeline. So they used to be, so now they're kind of able to finish their work in their own time period. And some teachers are different and they're requiring them to wait and listen to the entire class, and they're not allowed to do any of their work. So that too, just being able to kind of use their own independence and maturity to kind of create that structure for themselves to have their needs met. Can you press it again? I'll just press them all. Okay, so these are some of the behaviors that we're seeing with kids that are kind of indicative of when they may or may not need a sensory break. So we're seeing a lot more fidgeting. We're seeing our children fatigue quickly. They're having a hard time completing their work. They either have too much energy or too little energy. They're zoning out. They're frustrated. So these are all signs that it would be more beneficial to have a sensory break. So I'm going to go over what an optimal sensory break is. So sensory breaks can actually be done by themselves, and we can talk about some ideas of ways to set up a sensory break where they can independently do it, or you could do it with siblings. So a lot of times we have a lot of the kids who are all homeschooling at once, and I, for example, have 6 of my kids all at one time at home, and it's been challenging to say the least. And what I've realized is that I've set up the home environment a lot like Michelle and Chris has been saying, where I have like a study area and we have a break area and we have a sensory room. And So it's really been helpful. I've actually put a lot of those strategies to practice. But analyzing our home environment was one of the first things we did with the sensory piece to have our kids kind of be able to optimally learn. So we created an environment where there's a lot of natural light, not a lot of visual distractions, optimal seating, meaning we let each of our kids choose what type of chair they'd like to sit in, whether it was ordering a ball for them to have some more movement or ordering like a very rigid seat for them to sit in, but being able to really look at what's going on in their environment and understand your child and what helps them learn the best. Also, scheduling. So if we are homeschooling for the day, giving them a sensory diet or break that sets them up for the day, as well as alternating between classes. So if you're going to have a period of sitting, have a sensory break. Period of sitting, sensory break, so that they actually have them built in throughout the day so they never have that increased arousal level. Frequency and duration is probably the most important thing. So if you are doing a sensory break, it is better to do 5 minutes of something multiple times than to do a long hour. So that's very key, because a lot of times they're like, oh, I just had a lunch break and I'm done. But if you think about that chart that we were talking about in the yellow line, that really wouldn't have been enough. It would have been better to continuously bring that arousal level down so that they could maintain optimal learning throughout the day and not feel as frustrated when something did stress them out. So this is what I call the organizing sequence. So this is something that every child can do. If your child does have sensory issues, I guarantee it, this will not overstimulate them. And if they don't have sensory issues, this is just a great way to add in a sensory break. So it's really a sequence, meaning that we're going to start with a vestibular activity, which means getting your head moving, activating that sensory system. Then we follow it up with proprioception to release that neurotransmitter, help the brain process it and calm you. And then you end with respiration. And I know that Chris had mentioned some mindfulness activities that had a lot of respiration suggestions in there. So you could look at those, but I will also provide a list of these 3 activities as well. So you could choose one respiration followed by one vestibular, followed by one proprioceptive, followed by one respiration. And this sequence is amazing for all kids. And I'm hoping you guys are a little antsy right now and willing to be good participants, but I wanted to move to the next slide and see if you guys would try a sample sensory break with me. So this is one that we made up for kind of elementary age kids, but it could be altered to work with older kids. And I do have another slide after this that will have activities that are more appropriate for older kids. But I'd love to see if you guys could stand up. So I'll stand up and I'll make you guys stand up as well. So we're going to activate our vestibular system first. So what we're going to do is I'd like you to pretend that we're going apple picking, which is perfect season right now. You can't even see me, so hold on. Okay. And it's apple picking season, so I figured this would work. So you're going to reach up and you're going to grab an apple and you're going to use your visual system to look where that apple is. And you're going to put it in the basket down below. And then you're going to reach up and you're going to grab another apple and you're going to put it in the basket down below. And we're going to do that 2 more times, reaching up, grabbing apples, putting in the basket. Another one, putting in the basket. And we've just gotten our head tipping through space. And now we're going to stomp our apples. I want you to stomp the apples because we're going to make some applesauce. Because we want to eat something that we produced. So you're stomping, stomping, stomping. And then we're going to squeeze out all of the apple juice to make sure we've got it all. So really squeeze your body, get your legs, squeeze it all out. And then, because we want to eat our amazing applesauce, we're going to blow it out. So I'd like you to hold your fingers up and you're going to take a deep breath in. And when you exhale, you're going to blow down each of your fingers. And one more time to make sure it's really cool enough to eat. All right, so that was a quick, really, really quick kind of strategy that you could do with a younger kid. And hopefully you all feel a little bit more like alert and ready to pay attention, and that's kind of the point of doing a sensory break. So it was very short, quick, and you could do little things like that throughout the day, but the point was that we hit our vestibular system, our proprioceptive system, And then we added in a respiration component to make sure that we are feeling calm and ready to come back. And then on the next slide, this is something that I created that, again, your kids could be an active participant with you. So it's, you roll the dice 5 times and you do each activity. So if the first roll you get a 3, you would do the activity under the red and 3. The next one you get a 2, you would do the activity under the yellow and the 2. And this is something I could provide you guys after, but your kids can come up with this together. So you could actually, you know, change all of the activities on here. And again, it's a really quick break. It's independent as your kids are learning when they need a break, and you can have them just pull this out and do it independently. Another aspect is having tools around the house that they can actually use, that you can make up obstacle courses with, that they can take a movement break with. So this is just something that you can utilize to have around the house, some different tools, and you know, we can help you create like some sort of activities, or your kids and you can create some sort of activities that would work well for that. So we added like a yoga ball, weighted balls, things for them to fidget with. Painter's tape is really so that you can make like fun games on the floor where they can like jump in and out of things and have a visual target that way. And then a last suggestion is having a cozy corner. So this is really, this one looks more for a younger kid again. The point of this is to be able to tune out everything. So to really give them like a place to go and just take a break from everything. No more screens, dimming the lights, feeling, and for this, we've also, for older kids, you can do like one of those chairs that they can be in, or a yogi bow that they could sit in and just have a basket of like a book, a fidget, a squeeze ball. Like I know my teenagers do that all of the time. They knit. So they'll like go into, you know, a chair or a beanbag and just sit and knit and just take an actual break, put some headphones on and kind of tune out the world for a little bit. And then they're ready to go back to learn. So these are just really, really quick strategies. That is all I had for you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris.
Thank you, Melissa and Michelle. That was fantastic. A lot of great ideas. We know that we've run over time, but we're welcome. You know, we're happy to stay on for a few more minutes. If folks have any questions, you can, you can chat them to us, or maybe Mark, if you can put us back into the kind of broad mode. Sorry, here we got some things. So maybe if you could put us back into where we can see everybody. Anybody who wants to ask a question, if you want to, you know, bring your picture up, or as I said, you can chat things to us. So we'll hang on for a couple more moments. The other thing is for folks that did sign up with us, we will send out the PowerPoint so that you have this information in PowerPoint format as well. And then you can always reach out to us at any point if you've got further questions, follow-ups, things like that.
I can send details about what I talked about to support the slides if anybody wants to see that in writing, more detailed. So.
Great. All right. Sounds like we answered all the questions that you guys could possibly have. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As we said, in a couple of weeks, we'll be sending out some information about this, but Dr. Ethan Rothstein and Dr. Dan Glass will be presenting on technology and some ways to handle some of the challenges that technology is bringing into our lives. And then in the following few weeks after that, we'll be having Rebecca Strang and Dr. Lindsay Blass will be presenting as well on some issues related to attachment and factors for parents to be considering in that area. Okay, so thank you all for joining us, and we hope it was helpful, and we hope to see you on some of our future presentations. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.